One of the best things about last Epoch is how easy it is to respec your hero build, with it only taking a few minutes at late game. Now for this reason, many people run a fast leveling build for levels 1 to 80 before switching to their main build. So for today's video, we'll show off one of the quickest and easiest ways to level the Falconer mastery from levels 1 to 80. The specific leveling build we'll be running makes use of puncture for early leveling before we switch to a full minion setup that has 100% crit rate for a Falcon and ballistas from only one gear piece. So once you actually get to this point in the guide, you'll be flying through the levels. Now before we do go in, there is an XP guide on the channel that you may wish to check out if you've not watched it yet, as that will help out a ton here. But let's go in, let's start off with a general overview first. So we start off here then with a general progression infographic, so feel free to take a screenshot of this so you have it for future reference. Now with this build, it's almost split in half in regards to the leveling process and how we run it. So from levels 1 to 40 we'll be using one particular setup, and then we switch from levels 40 to 80, but the switch is nice and easy. It only involves us changing one skill. Now the actual progression then, at level 3 you want to add shift to your bar, which is a fantastic movement ability. At level 5 you'll spec into puncture. You can do a ton of damage with this, and I'll break down the actual tree and the point allocation later on in the video for this skill. Once we have 15 points into the rogue class, what you want to do is you want to spec ballista into the slot that opens up at level 8. We hold off until we actually get ballista unlocked before we drop that in. Level 16 you'll choose the Falconer mastery and you'll add falconry to your bar, so that gives you your falcon pet. At level 20 we'll spec into falconry. Level 35 will spec into smoke bomb, that'll be relevant later on. From there, this is where we get the change on our build. It's a small change, but it actually completely changes how the build plays. So what you want to do is you want to despec puncture. We'll no longer be using any attacks ourselves, and you want to spec into dive bomb, and this will be when you have 35 points in the Falconer mastery, so it will be round about level 40 or so you get to that point. So you'll no longer be using puncture. All your damage will be coming from your falcon and also your ballistas, and they will have 100% crit chance, and I'll break down why that will be the case once we get to the gear section. But finishing up this progression section here, once you hit level 50 you'll want to spec into shift. But that is the progression. Let's actually look at the gear now. Gear wise then, for this build we will run over some useful uniques you want to keep an eye out for whilst leveling. Before we do that, I will just say that one stat that you really want to focus on here will be dexterity, because this will actually scale the abilities we're using at both early game for the first half of the build and also the ones we will be using later game as well. But let's have a look at some of the gear you want to keep an eye out for. So our main damage skill for the first half of the build is puncture. Now you can actually choose to use that with a bow or melee weapon, so we'll cover both of them here. The first one we have, and this worked out amazing for me, and this is without any legendary potential on it, it's the Hammer of Laurent. This is equipable from level 1, and with puncture this is absolutely awesome. The next unique we have is the Taste of Blood. Normally I wouldn't use an axe on a rogue, but because puncture has bleed in it and this unique is all about bleed, it can work out really well, and this is equipable from level 13. We have the Cleaver next, another really strong melee unique, equipable at level 27. It's got a ton of melee physical damage on it, this one, and on top of that it has +1 to the level of all skills as well, which is especially nice early game. Moving on to the bows, if you want to use puncture on a ranged weapon instead, we have Longshot. This is equipable at level 23, and this unique is actually really custom set up for the puncture skill, so this can work really nice. We then have the new unique. This is Talons of Valor. This is equipable at level 30. This has a ton of bow damage and it's got a ton of plus to your skills as well, such as falconry, dive bomb and aerial assault. The final weapon we have here is Euphrane's Stand. This is equipable at level 36. This is really all about buffing your minions, and it's round about this point that we would actually switch to the minion build that makes use of the ballistas and your falcon. So if you have this, this can be a great one to use as well. Moving on to the helmet slot here, we don't have any uniques, and you do get this later on, but it is perfect for our setup. So this is the Falconer helm, equipable at level 68. You can see with this it gives you dexterity, which is perfect for us, as well as melee and thrown damage for our Falcon as well. For the body armour slot here, we have the trusty Kestrel. I always recommend this when you've just started off because it gives you additional movement speed, and that really does help out early game. Our next item here is another base one, but it's perfect for the setup we will be running late game. This is the Falconry armour, equipable at level 68. You want to keep an eye out for this because you've got a decent amount of armour, you've got dexterity, and then you've got that additional flat damage for your Falcon as well. The next unique we have here is the Gambler's Fallacy. Now this is what allows us to switch our build to a 100% crit rate build for the Falcon and also the Ballistas. You can see with this 100% critical strike chance if you've not dealt a critical strike recently. When we switch our setup, we personally won't be doing any attacks at all, so that allows us to maintain that 100% crit strike chance that is inherited by the Falcons and the Ballistas. So starting off, the Gambler's Fallacy, this is unlockable at level 1. You get it from the Ezra's Ledger quest very early on in the game. This quest is bugged at the moment, so if you don't currently have this, there is another version of it called the Soul Gambler's Fallacy. This is unlockable at level 41, this particular one. You get it from the Soulfire Bastion dungeon. Once you finish the dungeon as a gambler at the end, and if you gamble for amulets, there's a chance you'll actually get this. So hopefully you potentially got it from earlier on. If not, by the time you've watched this video, the bug with the quest will hopefully be fixed. If not, as a backup, then you go to the Soulfire Bastion dungeon to get this particular unique. The next great leveling unique we have here is the Thornslinger Belt, equipable at level 12. This will give you +1 to the level of physical skills. That's really nice early on, and it will give you increased movement speed. Moving on to the boot slot here, we have two that can work out really nice. You've got Lessons of the Metropolis, equipable at level 1, give you a nice amount of movement speed, and they actually give you dodge rating and dexterity on top of that. We then have the Advent of the Erased, equipable at level 16. These are nice because there's a chance to gain haste for 3 seconds when a nearby enemy dies, but you'll see down the bottom there, when you gain haste or refresh its duration, then your minions will gain haste as well as frenzy, so that means faster movement speed and attack speed, and that will apply to both your Ballistas and your Falcon. Finishing up the gear slots here, we have the ring, we have the Arboreal Circuit. If you have 2 of these at max roll, they can give you up to 36% movement speed, and these are equipable from level 1 as well. In regards to idols you want to keep an eye out for, there's only really one here. It's the Adorned idol, and it's the top modifier on this. You can see it can give you up to 10 flat bow physical damage for your ballista. This can make them hit a whole lot harder. So that's gear to keep an eye out for whilst you're leveling. Let's look at the blessings now. For the blessings here, then we have a short list of some you want to keep an eye out for that can be useful for this build whilst you are leveling. The roll ranges that you see on screen will be for your normal rather than your empowered timelines. But starting off, you've got Fall of the Outcasts. It can give you an additional 6% experience. You have Reign of Dragons. It can give you crit strike avoidance. This can really help out when you're leveling. That's up to 45%. And then you have Spirits of Fire timeline. This can actually give you increased minion damage up to 60%. So that's it. There's not many that are really set up for this particular build, so nice short section there. Let's go in and let's now talk about the passive skill tree and the point allocation for it. For this section here, we'll use last epoch tools and we'll break down the passive point allocation. You can see down the bottom here, I've actually recorded the progress. So I'm not going to go through the nodes in the order that I put points into them, but I will quickly run over the different nodes. So firstly, we've got Steady Hand. This gives us dexterity. We put a very high value on dexterity with this leveling setup. We have 1 point into Guile. That allows us 5 points into Evasion. That's damage taken while moving, reduced by 20%. We'll constantly be moving, and it gives us increased dodge rating as well. We have 1 point into Twin Blade. It's up to you if you want to dual wield or not. If you don't, then of course take the point out of that. And then we've got dodge and parry. That gives us additional dodge rating, but it gives us glance and blow chance, which is great as well. And that gets us up to the 20 points. So let's look at the next tree now. So we would go straight into the Falconer tree because we want to unlock Dive Bomb as quickly as we can. Now we have 5 points into Handler, that's given us increased minion damage. It's given us the crit chance as well, which does help us out to an extent because you're scaling on your crit chance on your Falcon is only 75%, it's not the full 100%. We've then got Wilderness Scout, so 1 point in that allows us 5 points into Outlander's Tenacity, it gives us dodge rating and maximum health gained as Endurance Threshold, that's up to 15% of our health, so that's nice for survivability. We have some more Dexterity here, that's an additional 8, plus your Falcon deals additional thrown damage per point of your Dexterity. We have 6 points into Tactician, that's additional damage for your Falcon and your Ballistas. 6 points into Evasion Tactics, more Dexterity once again, as well as increased armour and dodge chance. 1 point into Coordinated Fade, so whenever we use our shift, which I put as the first ability, then we'll be getting Silver Shroud. That means we dodge the next attack. There is a cooldown on that, but it's still pretty nice. We have 1 point into Intuitive Connection, so Falcon Strike and Dive Bomb are now instant casts. 5 points into Relentless Talons, that's increased minion damage 30%, and also you regain health per point of Dexterity when your Falcon hits an enemy, and we will have a lot of Dexterity with this setup. We have 4 points into, I'm not even going to try and pronounce that particular word, but we put 4 points into it because you have increased armour for each time your Falcon has hit an enemy recently. And also we have Needle-like Precision, so that gives us the increased minion critical multiplier, which is great because we've got that 100% crit chance. 5 points into Finesse them, so you regain health when you or your minions crits an enemy. They'll constantly be critting them, so that is great, and it also gives us crit avoidance. And then down the bottom here we have Tailwind, so you take less damage while moving, increased movement speed and increased dodge rating, and it's doubled when your Falcon hits as well recently, and your Falcon will be consistently hitting all the time. For the Blade Dancer tree, we put 8 points into Cloak of Shadows. This gives us Dexterity and 16% critical blow chance. And then we have Marksman to finish up here. I had 6 points left because we're only taking this build up to level 80. That's why there's 20 unspent points at the top. But with the last 6 points, I would put them into Focus Fire, and that gives us even more Dexterity. Now let's go in, let's break down the skill trees now. Starting off here, I'll very quickly go over Puncture because we're only using that in the first half of the build. There's not that many points we will be putting into it, certainly not the full 20, but I would place 2 points into Perforate. This then allows me to get points into Press the Attack. With this one, attacking with Puncture and hitting at least one enemy grants Frenzy, so that's an additional 20% attack speed. And then some points into Timing can be nice, it gives you more damage, that's 12% per point, and also Splinter gives you physical resistance shred chance 20% per point as well. But that's all I would really be putting into that tree, because again, halfway through this particular setup we switch over to the minion one. Now, in regards to the minion build then, we have ballistas that you would specialise into first. We have points going into shared enhancements, really important. Your damage modifiers also apply to your ballistas, but at a reduced ratio. We have 1 point into heavy bolts, that allows us to place 1 point into bodkin bolts, so you'll pierce one enemy. Generally, I find that's enough for me. We have 1 point into sharpened tips, which allows 4 points into perfect aim. So your critical strike chance and critical strike multipliers also apply to your ballista. This is at a rate of 100%, and that's how you get the 100% crit rate on your ballistas with the Gambler's Fallacy. For the remaining points, 1 point into Agile Engineering works really nice. Ballistas take less time to place and have increased attack speed based on your dexterity, and we are stacking that stat. We have 1 point into Efficient Construction, so this reduces the mana cost, otherwise they can fairly take down your mana pretty quick. And then you've got Practical Build, that increases the damage by 40%. 30%, that's a more multiplier, and attack speed by 40% is a more multiplier as well. Finishing up here, 3 points into flaming shots, 1 point into explosive delivery, and then 3 points into armed construction. So your ballistas will explode when they expire or they are destroyed, and because we're stacking dexterity, it'll be a huge explosion that will do a ton of damage as well, and that will also be a guaranteed crit as well there. We have falconry next here. You would want to make a beeline for the nodes down here, so it's 1 point into Falconer's Journey, 2 points into Side by Side that allows you Train to Hunt, so this is where you get a portion of your damage that will apply to your Falcon. The same applies for the crit chance, and that's the important one. You'll see it's only 75%, whereas ballistas were 100, but with some of the other choices we've made in this build, you'll be getting close to 90-95% on your Falcon. Now, other areas you can place points in, you've got avian stamina, so that's additional hits for your Falcon strikes, and also your Falcon attacks 16% quicker. 1 point into Hunter's Spoils. When your Falcon kills an enemy or hits a boss or raid enemy, it restores health and mana to you based on your total attributes. This can be nice because, again, your ballistas can be quite mana intensive. We've got a 16% kill threshold here on Falcon strikes, which is fantastic. The Blood Dance increases the number of strikes with Falcon strikes if you kill an enemy. And then moving down to this part of the tree here, we have 3 points into Is It a Bird? That's additional damage for your Falcon. Additional damage once again here with Agile Prey, and then I like this one, Sidekick, which keeps the Falcon close to me. Our next skill here is Smoke Bomb. This is using the setup that was discovered by various other people. It wasn't discovered by me, but it is amazing. So with this, when you fire this off, you'll create a Smoke Bomb, and then there's a setup with Dive Bomb where you can have the shadows created by your Smoke Bomb are consumed by shadow Falcons, and they do a heap of damage. So the setup you want for this is you want additional duration. You get that here up to 50%. 1 point into Smoke Blades, 4 points into Umbro Assault, so that's generating your shadows for you. You would then place 1 point into Thick Smoke and Eroding Fumes, which allows you 1 point into Smoke Screen Arrow, so you can choose where the smoke arrow actually goes, and then from there you then call in your Falcon Dive. Now, other points you can place in this tree, I've got some points into Generosity to increase the area. Got 1 point into Shrouded in Darkness, so when you're actually in the smoke cloud, if you go in yourself, then you will get a glancing blow chance there via Dusk Shroud, and then Rapid Concealment gives you more stacks of Dusk Shroud as well. So Dive Bomb then, we will be spamming it often, and once again, if you can actually fire this off inside a smoke bomb, you'll do a lot more damage with it. The way you do this is we've got points into Russian Wings, so that increases the damage on Dive Bomb and it reduces the delay for the Falcon coming down, but it allows us to go here on Wings and Shadow. So Dive Bomb now creates a Shadow Falcon to strike the location of your shadows, and it will prioritise your shadows nearest the target location. Some additional points here, we've got 1 point into Flock of Crows, which allows us 1 point into Birds Aren't Real. So with this, a Shadow Falcon takes your Falcon place that uses Dive Bomb. It just gives you more uptime on your Falcon attacking. And then we have 1 point into Dancing Shadows, which can give your actual Shadow Falcons a chance to attack twice. Doubling the damage for 1 point is pretty amazing. 4 points into Rush of the Hunt to increase the cooldown recovery speed on this because we want to spam it. We have 3 points into this node here, Focused Hunter. It means Dive Bomb doesn't cost any mana, which is fantastic. 1 point into Cloud Gatherer, so if you actually cast this on your Smoke Bomb area will last longer. And then a remaining 2 points go into Rapid Pursuit. This is giving us some mana back when you use Dive Bomb on a boss. The final skill I have here, and there is some flexibility in this, but I like to have Shift specialised into it. It gives us some nice bonuses. So we've got 3 points into Velocity, so you can use it faster and it's more mana efficient. 3 points into Momentum, it gives you 50% increased movement speed for 1.5 seconds after shifting. 3 points into Swift Recovery, it allows us 1 point into Shadow Slip, so you're invulnerable while you're shifting. So if you're going up against Lagon, for example, you can just shift through his beams. We have 4 points into Elusive. You have additional dodge chance per point of Dexterity for 1 second after shifting, and we've got a ton of Dexterity with our setup. We have 3 points into Shadow Recuperation. It allows us to go further along this tree. So we've got Breathing Technique, we've got Vault, but the one we're going for is Molten, so shifting cleanses all negative ailments on you, which is fantastic. So that is everything you need to know for leveling the Falconer Mastery from level 1 to 80 with one of the quickest and easiest setups for last Epoch. Now there are quite a few other leveling guides on the channel in this same playlist that this one is available, so if this has been helpful, feel free to check the ones out as well. But thanks for tuning in for this one, stay safe, I'll see you all again soon.